I'm Ryan Streeter. I'm the director of the Civitas Institute, and it's really an honor to have you all come today to this event. This institute's a couple years old here at UT. We do a lot of work on economic policy, law and policy issues. Increasingly, we're going to do kind of future of education and higher education as one of our verticals. But one through line for a lot of our work is just social mobility in America and around the world. And I'm really pleased to be able to invite Joel Kotkin up here in a minute. How about I change mics? Yeah. Let's see if this one's a little better. Joel Kotkin at Chapman University is a fellow of the Civitas Institute and maybe known to a number of you here as a demographer, as a futurist when it comes to urbanism issues in America. And Joel's assembled a great team that's just put out a report on the future of Latinos in America, which we think is a really important topic when we look at social mobility and the future of this country. So we wanted to bring everyone together for this event to kind of talk about the report and things that are related to it this morning from our series of esteemed panelists and speakers. So to introduce everybody and to introduce the day and the report, I'm going to turn it over to Joel Kotkin now. Joel?
Thanks, Ryan. This is going to be very brief. I want to get Jennifer up here as soon as possible. It's weird to introduce your co-author of something, but you know, I'll get over the weirdness. Being from California, you know. But one of the things that I think really important about Jennifer, first of all, you know, she leads the Holland and I West Coast Land Use Environmental Group, which means she's constantly in court. And what I think one of the great things about what Jennifer does is she begins to make people who have policy ideas to start to think about the consequences. We have seen tremendous spread of poverty, of people not being able to buy a house, of good jobs disappearing. And the biggest losers in that are basically historically underserved minorities, particularly Latinos and African Americans. And the gap has gotten greater and greater. And what's probably most annoying of all is it's all been done in the name of racial and social justice, but it's had the exact opposite effect. So with that set up, Jennifer.
Thanks, Joel. Yeah, I might lean on something. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a privilege to be here. I always start by thanking Civitas and just telling everyone how much I enjoy visiting and getting a sense again of energizing, optimism, future orientation. It's like we're not just sitting around waiting for sea level to drown us. And that's kind of a little bit of a thing in California. And so it's a little too much doomerism, and what it's doing to our young people and working families is not healthy. The second thing I want to just assure everyone is I'm here on a very temporary visa. I'm not one of these Californians who's going to come and buy your house out from under you. I'm returning to Berkeley, for better or for worse, at the end of the day, but it really is a privilege to be here. I've long admired Joel Kotkin, who writes truth to power. And in California, believe it or not, that is writing what my parents would view as kind of common sense to the far left, which is our dominant political party. It's a one-party state, but in a one-party state, the swing or pressure is it's from the edge of the party, and the centrists or moderate or labor side Dems, which I was until 8 months ago for my entire life. We are the far right, and it's a very uncomfortable situation. And Joel has never hesitated to say, what are you doing? And what are you doing to which people and for what? So he's on various short lists, you know, to be exterminated when the revolution comes. One more quick introductory piece is California used to be a manufacturing powerhouse. It still has manufacturing GDP, but that's more in high-value older facilities. We're in the middle of the biggest resurgence of manufacturing in America since World War II, really. And California is poised to miss all of that. And my family and I am from Pittsburgh, California, which named itself to get U.S. Steel to move there. Both grandfathers, Mexican and German, worked at U.S. Steel for their careers. My dad joined right after high school and worked there until he was permanently laid off at age 57. My sister just started college, little sister, and I had just graduated from law school. I come from a, I think, not uncommon background. People think, California, Looney Tunes, yes, but it's also just full of people who go to work and raise a family and, play sports and love the outdoors and, don't have to deal with mosquitoes very often. It's a paradise. But that California has been pretty much priced out. So you guys complain about Californians. Places like Pittsburgh, where I grew up, or other lower cost, but kind of proximate to city, used to be factory towns, have been decimated. The biggest employer left at Pittsburgh. When I was there, it was Dow Chemical, Fiberboard, Mansville, big utility, U.S. Steel, all kinds of name Union Carbide. It was the sort of New Jersey of the Bay Area in terms of factories. All of them are gone, 100%. The biggest employer is now the school district, kind of like Flint, Michigan. And so the devastation that we've seen in my lifetime has been near complete in terms of wiping out higher value, higher paid, union jobs accessible to people who either didn't have a high school degree, both my grandfathers, or just a high school degree, my dad. So what I do is get permits to build stuff, housing, infrastructure, power plants, hospitals, freeways, and building anything in California is a blood sport. And the fact that you need a lawyer like me, or the 30 people now who work with me just in my firm, let alone the many other lawyers in the state who do this work, is testament to how hard it is to build stuff. And mostly it takes us 10, 20, 30 years to build stuff. And if you need something built, like a home or a way to get to work, or a decent factory job that you don't have to have a fancy degree to qualify for a living wage, then you're hurt by our refusal to build. If you're older, if you're ideologically now questioning the value of people, aren't we over our holding capacity, state and the country, on the globe, then not building stuff is a victory every day. And our legal system is set up to preserve the status quo. Preserving the status quo in the name of the environment, in my space, has winners and losers. And people who need stuff to work, who don't already own a home, who haven't retired, who don't have secure jobs, they kind of need stuff. And those are the people who are hurt when we won't build anything for them. And that's a big difference with Texas. I don't think it actually occurs to most people in this state from either party that, yeah, we don't really care that, we're running out of water, or, we got all these people who don't have a place to live. I think the idea in Texas is we got to deal with it. We got to address it. We want economic mobility. We want upward mobility. We want prosperity. We want access to prosperity. That is not a shared value at all in California. And in fact, the sort of newest mantra in California, far left dominant circles of our legislature, is we're in a post-jobs economy. Between AI and robotics, jobs will soon be a thing of the past. So really we should focus on increasing tax revenue and then redistributing collected taxes based on a sort of top-down decision about who should get what. that has been collected. So that's just a very radical foreign concept. And when Joel approached me about this study, and Karla and others here played instrumental roles in making it all happen. Is Erika here? Yeah, there you are. What struck me specifically was how vastly different the opportunities and quality of life is for Latinos across different parts of the country. Home ownership is not unattainable in many parts of the country, especially if you're willing to have two people work for a while. Sometimes two people work 3 jobs for a while. Even if you have two people work 3 jobs in California for a while, it's not going to happen. Our now median home price statewide, including taking into account much less costly locations, is edging toward $800,000. It costs us $800,000 to build a 1-bedroom, deed-restricted apartment that is available only for a low-income household. We have piled on so much cost burden, more than $100,000 in fees per home, that the idea of affordable housing is like crazy. And that's just not true in most of the rest of the country. Just like, you know, I feel like I've stepped back into a science fiction movie when I see the cost of gas here, or electricity, or job opportunities, or new factories being built. And in many parts of the country, that's true. And I think what our data shows, and I'll close with this, is Latinos are sort of, generally speaking, incredibly aligned with the American dream. Hardworking, you know, a higher percentage than our population working in the military or in, you know, as cops or public safety people. Upward mobility is a thing. And, you know, earning enough to buy a home and have a car or a truck, and making sure your kids get through school. These are shared values, and they're shared social values. And yeah, there might be some kind of right-leaning or left-leaning cultural choices, and people have a little bit of a difference in terms of, you know, which church or how much church, but it's a shared and very much value-aligned population, and it's okay. It's okay to be a Latino and live in much of the country. It's hard. Some places it's harder. But in California, it's now impossible. And it's impossible because of policy choices made by left-leaning leaders in a whole sequence of arenas that have said, sure, for the privilege of being able to live where I live, the first thing you need to do is put $100,000 into the pocket of local government before you buy the land, build the home, pay the labor. That's just a price. I call it a country club initiation fee, just to live. And that could not be more exclusionary. In the old civil rights era, in Jim Crow, there were all kinds of things that different places in the United States did to make it hard, if not impossible, for Black or Latino or Asian residents to live. They used to call them sundown towns because there was never a place to live. Racial exclusionary zoning. There was a whole bunch of like just economic obstacles, like minimum lot sizes that said, you know, only big homes are welcome here. The explicit racial exclusion covenants, which are still on the books all over the place in California, those are illegal. But all of the economic choices we made are not illegal. And in particular in the climate arena, and this is my closing comment, the data we assembled showed that California's greenhouse gas net zero type policy choices had a huge negative regressive impact. And that's written up in an article called Green Jim Crow, where we're shutting down, deindustrializing higher wage jobs that are more available to people without fancy degrees. we're increasing utility costs and fuel costs, which you don't have a little choice but to pay. But I'm like, why is my party choosing to do these policy choices instead of, reducing greenhouse gas where it's a heck of a lot less expensive to do so? And sure enough, when our state agency in charge of climate updated its climate plan, it said in black and white, page 57 and 58, in 2 successive paragraphs, policy choices that we are adopting will cause middle and lower income families to lose an aggregate of more than $5 billion a year. It will be that much more expensive for families at that income level. Wealthier families, no problemo. We're actually thinking you might save some money. How exciting. Next paragraph. Because of California's demographics, the policy choices we're making that cause this disparate cost on middle and lower income families does rest disproportionately on the backs of Latino, Black, and the lowest income of the Asian subgroup. So we're sorry about that. It's kind of just an accident of California's demography that we're inflicting harms on lower and middle income households, and disproportionately those harms are falling on Black and brown people. This is black and white, and then unanimously approved by California's left leadership. That's not where the rest of the country is. Our data show what is still possible in America, and I'm very, very excited to be here and start a day off on discussion about what are we doing and how do we make sure that this California trend, because California's cool, right? Everybody, let's do California. Oh yeah, they know what they're doing. Oh, the environment ethics. No, no, look at who's harmed. Is that really what you want to do? And when it comes down to it, most people don't want to do it, but they also they're uncomfortable about, fossil fuels or the environment. And I don't understand. Let's just let the experts. Don't let the experts. California kept schools shut down nearly 2 years because of the experts. It's important to question the experts, and I'll shut down with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer will join our panel. One of the things that we really pride ourselves at Civitas is they try to do original research and don't say things that you cannot prove, okay? So one of the first things we want to do, this first panel, we're going to say, okay, what is it that Latinos think, what do they want? And the second panel will deal with what sort of economic policies would be most efficient. So we have Linette Sanchez, who's a PhD student here at the University of Texas. She's worked with the survey research team here, which was just terrific. In the report, there are numerous things that we recite from that. And if you want, at some point, we can send, if you're interested, just let us know and we'll send you all the findings. So I'd just like to have, now Linette, I think, comes from Chicago, so that's another major center of Latino influence. So Linette's going to share some of the findings that we had, and then she'll join the panel and we'll open up the discussion. So.
Ready? Well, do I use a microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me know if I'm too loud. Are you good? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Linette Sanchez, and I am a third-year government PhD student here at UT Austin. And today I'm going to be presenting the results of the Civitas Latino survey that was launched last May. So just to get us a little bit acquainted with the data, I'm going to go through some descriptives about the Latinos that took our survey. So here we see that 83% of Latinos that took the survey were born in the US, 7% were born in Puerto Rico, and then 10% were born outside of the US. And then when kind of looking at the distribution about where Latinos' parents were born, here we see that 44% had both parents born in the US, 33% had both born in another country, and then 23% had one parent born in the mainland US and one parent born outside. When also looking at the distribution of the different countries of origin that were represented in our survey, here we see that Mexico, 47% of our respondents were Mexican, 21% were from Puerto Rico, and then a smaller percentage from different countries. And then when concerning citizenship status, 79% of the Latinos were native-born citizens, 13% were naturalized, and then 4% were legal permanent residents, and 5% were other status. And then here we see in the language usage, it was also very diverse. So 15% said they never spoke Spanish, 46% said every day, and 22% said a few times per month. And then when concerning, this is more based on like census data, but we know that the US labor force is mathematically dependent on Latinos for survival, right? So the total US population is projected to grow by only 26 million through 2060. And without Latinos, the US enters demographic contraction. And we really see here that Latinos are the future solvency of Social Security. And this wasn't specific to the Latino pool. This was another like general national survey that we had. But we see that the national public is 63% agree with increasing border security, 45% with finishing the border wall, 45% with deporting all undocumented immigrants. And this is again based on the national survey, not just Latinos, but just to acquaint us with immigration attitudes around the country. But then at the same time, we also see that the national sample, right, supports supportive immigration policies. So 72% support those who arrive legally, and they're very supportive of pathways to citizenship and support. So 54% approve of a citizenship path for those in the US for the past 5 years, and those who were brought to the US as children. And there's also this really strong support for Dreamers, right, in this national sample, with 67% of respondents favoring a path for citizenship for undocumented individuals. And there's 55% that support increasing legal immigration through family and employment visas. So back to our Latino poll, we see that Latinos are a card-dependent workforce that believe in hard work. Right, so 74% of Latinos believe hard work is equally or more important than outside forces. And then when asking about the commute, 76% of Latinos said that they drove alone versus 16% that said public transit. There were also like a variety of different occupations that Latinos stated that they participated in: 16% retail, 12% construction, 11% healthcare. And then 61% said that not owning a car would be a major problem. And then the survey also asked about the housing situation of Latinos. So here we see that 37% owned a single family home, 31% rented a single family home, and when concerning the multifamily apartment, 27% owned it, and then 2% rented this multifamily apartment. The survey also asked Latinos about their moving history. So how many times have you moved in your lifetime? So here we see that 6% moved more than 10 times, 40% moved 3 to 5 times, and then 26% moved 1 to 2 times. And we also asked them for specific data on their approximate dates for their last 2 moves. So 23% said 2010 to 2019. And then 17% said that they moved in 2024, and there was a smaller percentage like throughout the years. When asking Latinos about future moves, we asked them, would you plan to move in the future? And then 76% said yes, and 24% said no. And then we also asked another question, do you think that you will ever live in your own dream home? And then 73% said yes, and 27% said no. And then we asked a follow-up, like, why not? And then 76% said that the prices of homes would be too high. And then there were other reasons, such as property taxes being too high, not enough homes like that available, and that they wouldn't allow people like them in the neighborhood. And 10% selected another reason. And overall, we see from the US, right, that the center of gravity is shifting from the border to new destinations. So while density may remain the highest on the border in cities like Rio Grande City that are 97% Latino, the fastest growth is happening in markets with historically low Latino populations, and we also see this migration trend. And net domestic migration markets with fewer than 1 million residents, and Latinos are moving to suburbs and rural areas for affordability. And we also see like the new destinations, so the fastest growth rates have like the states in stripes, right? And then the traditional hubs have been, are in blue. And we also saw from our survey that there really is this affordability crisis, right? So 79% of Latinos want their next move to be a single family home. And 73% believe that they will reach their dream home. Or right, like the barrier is that prices of homes are too high. And despite these barriers, Latinos also reported that they were extremely or very satisfied with their current neighborhood, which is also really interesting. And something else that our survey found is that there is structural anxiety despite personal resilience. While 74% of Latinos believe in hard work, nearly half of Latinos fear structural economic headwinds will derail the next generation. So this came across in questions like 45% of Latinos believe that their children will be worse off financially. 34% said it is not very likely that their children will be able to afford a home by the age of 30, which is a bit concerning. And then this isn't very new, right? But economic pragmatism drives migration, not necessarily cultural affinity. So here we see the main reason for the last move within the US for Latinos. 24% wanted a bigger, better home, 18% wanted an affordable, better place to live, and only 2% really wanted to move to be around more people like them. And then when thinking about the main reason for why these Latinos moved to the US, 34% said that their parents brought them as a child, another 24% said jobs or economic opportunities, and 12% to join family. And a key statistic is that 56% of Latinos rate affordability of housing as extremely important for moving. And yes, only 14% say the same for being around people who share their background. Right, and it is really inflation and cost of living that is driving the Latino vote at the moment. And we saw this in the exit polls, right? Latinos, 85% said that the economy and inflation was very important to them. And this is very consistent with our May 2025 survey, where 81% of Latinos cited affordability as the most important aspect for their living situation. And then, right again, 76% of Latinos said that the price of home was the #1 barrier to their American dream. So here we really see that economic pragmatism is more important to Latinos at this moment than necessarily ethnic solidarity. And the price of groceries was something that they really cared about. And we also had another section of the survey where we asked Latinos, like, where would you want to currently move to? So 31% said the local area where they currently live, 13% said suburban area, 12% said Northeast. And then walking through a lot of the other categories, a smaller percentage of Latinos said they wanted to move to West Coast, rural area, small towns, Southwest. They just wanted a warmer climate, southern states. No preference, don't know, Pacific Northwest, mountain region, and Midwest, or another location. And then we also asked Latinos the factors for the future moves. So we asked them, how important are the following factors when considering a move? So when concerning neighborhood safety, 57% said that was extremely important. Affordability of housing, 56% said that was extremely important. And right, the percentages were kind of a little bit varied when it came to these other factors, such as job opportunities, school qualities, availability of amenities and services, quality of public transportation, proximity to family and friends. And then a smaller percentage, right, said that it was extremely important for them to be around people who shared their background, or they prefer to be around people who share their political views. We also asked Latinos about their satisfaction with their living situation. So we asked them, what aspects of your situation do you consider most important? So 81% said affordability or cost of living. And then, right, a much smaller percentage cited the proximity to work, safety or low crime rate, proximity to family and friends, quality of schools, outdoor space, size of home, and access to healthcare services or public transit. go to that one. And then something else that was really interesting about the survey is that not as many Latinos are relying on Univision, the Spanish language largest TV network, for their news solely. So they're increasingly relying on Facebook, ABC, Talk Radio, Twitter, and Fox. But yeah, that mirrors the general population. And then we also saw that Latinos are an electorate more moderate than the parties that they support. So we saw that 50% identified as Democrat, 28% as Republican, 22% as independent. While we were looking at ideology, only 24% said liberal, 47% said moderate, 26% conservative. So we kind of see how there's a significant misalignment. So overall, we see that Latinos are a strong presence in our economy and in the labor force, and that Latinos tend to move because they want a bigger home, affordability, or because of change in their life situation. And we also see through our data that Latinos want their next move to be a single-family home, but they cite affordability as a main concern. So as Latinos continue to have bigger impacts on politics and economy, more attention should be paid to study the Latino community, the political wants and needs. But yeah, thank you so much, and I appreciate y'all listening.
Hi, so we're going to start the panel, just to explain the logic. What, besides doing the quantitative research, we did qualitative research, and we did 2 focus groups. Erika Ozuna, who I have to brag, she was my student at Pepperdine many years ago, who ran the one in San Antonio, and Karla Lopez Del Rio, who I do a lot of work with now, is very expert on the housing situation, particularly in Orange County and the Inland Empire. And we did one in Riverside. People say, well, why did you do it in Riverside instead of doing it in Los Angeles? Because that's where Latinos are moving. A friend of mine who went to school there 30 years ago at Riverside High School, she and her sister were the only Latinos in the school, and now the school's like 70% Latino. So I thought that I wanted to go to where people were going aspirationally, as opposed to people who they're in LA because the family's been there a long time, and also to reflect the fact that the majority of Latinos neither live in the countryside or in the barrio. They actually live in the same neighborhoods where basically most of the American population is. So what I'd like to do is ask Erika to talk a little bit about San Antonio, then Karla will talk about Riverside, and then the 3 of them will sort of be ready to deal with your questions. Hopefully we stimulated some thinking. So.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erika Ozuna, and I was the lead researcher for this project. Basically, the research consisted on Latino politics, education, immigration, values, economics, transportation, and home ownership. I did all the general research, numerous articles, reports, everything. And to complement the research, as Joel said, we included the focus groups. So I did the one in San Antonio, and most of the participants were from San Antonio, we had a participant from the Rio Grande Valley, which you'll hear later on in the second panel, everything about the valley too. So basically the key targets for the focus groups were to know their views of the economic future, the perception of the place or city where they live, and their sense of opportunities to achieve the American dream. And I recently visited Mexico City, and I was explaining to my friend what I was going to do, and she's like, well, what exactly is the American dream? So I found a beautiful description from the George W. Bush Presidential Center that says, the American dream is generally the North American belief that prosperity, success, and upward mobility are achievable for anyone through hard work, determination, and initiative, regardless of the background or birth circumstances. Rooted in the Declaration of Independence, it traditionally emphasizes homeownership, financial security, and the freedom to build a better life for oneself or one's children. So having said that, that was our focus for the San Antonio focus group, where most of the participants remain very optimistic about achieving the American dream or having their children achieve. I'm going to quote several of the participants, that way you get a feel or a sense of our discussion. We had a long list of questions and things we wanted to discuss, but we ran out of time. We focused, and most of the conversation was about the American dream and most of their optimism about, I don't know if it's just Texas, like Jennifer was saying, that it's not the case of California, but it was very interesting. So Mario is a former Navy officer who has also worked in education and was focused on the economic development of the Rio Grande Valley and the northern part of the state of Tamaulipas in Mexico. And his quote, quoting him, he said, "I'm very optimistic, but that's not the norm. In South Texas, the reason we created a task force is that we have 27% poverty, as compared to San Antonio with only 18% poverty. To deal with this issue, we are promoting economic development in the area and the high school dropout recovery program, which in the state of Texas, if you drop out of high school, you can go back and the state will pay for it. We've created the Possible Dream Adult High School program, which is to be able for high school dropouts to go back and complete their high school degree. And Mario was mostly concerned about how the federal and state budgets would affect services to the Latino community. Rick is a financial advisor, and he's first generation here in the US, but both parents were from Mexico. And his highlighted quote was, "Nobody's graduating at a faster rate than Hispanic Latinos. So they are very capable and nobody's doing it, from what I've heard, more than the ladies, like the ladies right here in the focus group, which is Hispanic or Latinas outpacing everybody else in graduation. I feel very blessed that my biggest question to my kids was not, are you going to go to school? It was, where do you want to go to school? These are some of the things that drive my optimism. First was education, second family, and third Latinas leading success. And we have an obligation to be an example." So very optimistic, very great input for our focus group was Rick. We also had Sikira. She's a project cost accountant in the transportation industry, and she's from Venezuela. She emphasized that the Latino community needs to have a change in mentality and seize the opportunities. She provided examples of her company offering scholarships to take classes, but none of her Latino coworkers applied for the scholarship. So she was also very diligent in emphasizing that we have the opportunities, we need to pursue them. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we had a PhD who works in higher education, and she was more concerned and worried about the education budget affecting Latinos' access to higher education and the representation in the higher education staff. Monica is a psychologist employed in the healthcare sector and previously in education for special needs students. She was also very optimistic, and she says, if you look around the city today, there are far more options for Latino families than when I first moved here. She also says, before the pandemic, many service providers avoided certain neighborhoods, and hiring or retaining staff was a major challenge. Now people are moving outwards in all directions, and with the developments taking place, it's great to see so many more options available for families across the city. Monica pointed out that the diversity is missing in rooms where any sort of big decisions happen. And then lastly, Cecilia is a landscape architect with a master's degree, and her highlighted quote was, "I can speak about aesthetics and what I see in terms of equity, things like access to parks or such. I'm currently working on local landscape architecture of the 150-acre Arboretum project, the first destination in South San Antonio. In terms of quality in my industry, I'm not super optimistic, but we try to change it in terms of access." So my 3 takeaway points from the focus groups was, 1, all stated that a family or a family member was crucial for them to obtain a college degree and achieve success. 2, the participants in the education sector were less optimistic than those employed in the private sector. And the 3rd takeaway is that they all agreed the importance of having mentors and being mentors to the younger generation.
The focus group that we had in Riverside was extremely dynamic as well. We had an immigration lawyer, first generation immigration lawyer. We had a retired reporter. We also had a data analyst, financial advisor, maybe in her 20s. So it was very diverse, both in many ways, but age and the backgrounds of what people did was very diverse. We held it in the, this is a little, here a little, okay, sorry. Is there something I can do to make it better?
Keeping it close to your face. Yes, ma'am.
Keeping it close to my face, okay. So, very much like, so we held the focus group in the Civil Rights Institute in Riverside County. And very much the way that, and Erika and I did not speak to each other. We did not plan anything together. These were 2 very separate groups by 2 very different Latinas that landed very much on optimism. And I honestly was not hoping or not thinking that would happen because of the current state of affairs of, Latinos, how they're talked about, and in media, in some of our neighborhoods, some of our neighbors really are not welcoming. But the majority of the conversation did not focus on that. It really did focus on, look, they may not see us as valuable today, but we know we are valuable. And there are many people who do see us valuable, as very valuable. So we need to lean on that, and we need to focus on working together with them. So optimism really in our Hispanic culture really is about the children. Moms will do what they need to do for their children. I know that I am that way. We will work, we will commute, we will sell things, we will be entrepreneurial. And that's one of the things that came up in the focus group. The Latinas here in the United States, very different from where I come from in Mexico City, are the motor of entrepreneurship. It's clear. And so there's a different type of reality for women in the United States. My example would be, not only do we care about homeownership here in the United States, we care about homeownership in general because we know in our countries it's almost impossible to buy a house. If you want to buy a house in Mexico City, where I'm from, either you buy it cash or you inherit it. But buying your own house, we're pretty much a country of renters. And that's what we as immigrants know, that owning land is extremely important. So the American dream and the promise of the American dream as a homeownership dream, at the core, was very much in this focus group a point to be made. That homeownership, at the end of the day, we're not building for those homes, and that's what Latinos want. We're building a lot of multifamilies, which are very important for transitioning into a family, but they don't see themselves living in 2-bedroom apartments with their children. We love open space. And the Inland Empire is a testament to that. We do have small pockets of California that still builds some single family. They sell like pancakes, and Latinos are all over those homes all the time. And we build them, so we know where they are, we know what we want, we know how to make them. They don't let us build it. Education was extremely important as well in the focus group. One of the very telling story about Latino education is the moms know, and the dads too. They're not all Latinos are supportive of education. Now, I would say some Latinos do focus more on hard work and the trades. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we are really hoping to see more plumbers, more electricians, more solderers. There's a lot of need in these positions, and you can make a nice living out of having your own business. And we see Latinos now having contracting businesses, really leaning into the things that we're really good at and the value we have brought to the U.S. So the issues that they were talking about were almost not very particular to Latinos. What they talked about, affordability is one of the problems. Lack of education is another one of the problems. They started realizing on their own that these are the problems of almost all new immigrants into the country. And they worry that if Latinos are not making it, we're starting to see waves of new immigrants coming from other parts of the world. For example, I sold my starter home in the Inland Empire to a young family of Egyptians. And the wife does not speak the language very well. I can see their struggle, as my struggle was when I came when I was 15. And I can see their desire for a beautiful neighborhood in which we lived and to build it together. Mentorship was extremely important in this case. Somebody that can hold your hand, somebody that you can trust. Latinos, we have to do a better job of being more civically engaged. And I know that we work many jobs, we cannot show up, but we need to ask for those avenues of civic engagement. And the reason why it was so important to have those comments about the importance of mentorship was the recognition that Latinos, we are extremely diverse. And when we get together, it's not a homogeneous group at all. I'm part of civic engagement in a network called Las Comadres, which is a national group that was founded by Nora Comstock, who's here in the audience. And when we get together in our homes, we are about 12,000 women around the country who open their homes, and we host each other, and we literally go 3 minutes each. What are you working on? It's all about you, a comadre, a woman. What are you working on? What are you hoping for? And I hear these conversations in that light, that civic engagement, when we get together, we are Republicans, we are Democrats, we're nonpartisan like I am. And we really do lean on each other. We really do learn from each other. We do business with each other. We learn about each other's projects. I interview some of the people for my research. And that focus group really exemplified that what I live, what I hear, the diversity of who we are. The focus group really mentioned this is very important, that we continue to meet civically, that we talk through our differences, but that we do focus on the things that we have in common, which is we want a better life, safe, lean, well-educated, citizens. We want to continue to contribute our value. And let's see. Last thing I wanted to say was, when you go home after these panels, you think, I should have said this. And so I'm sure that's the one thing that is escaping me right now. But I do want to say that Latinos are the future. At least in California, we're going to be more than 50% of the population. If we don't do well, California will not do well. And as Jennifer pointed out, things are not in our favor, specifically economically, not in our favor. And that's where we want to be most vocal. I think that we establish our value through these panels and this research, but it's really the continuity of the people that met that day and how they are now relating to each other. That was the true value of these focus groups, that it really brought us back into discussions that are civil, that we do have differences. You can't, for example, in some of our meetings, civically, we can't talk about abortion. We just don't talk about it as women. We have very different points of view about that. And some other topics that are difficult for Latinas and Latinos to speak about. But when it comes to, and so those are differences, and I can tell you I have my own opinions, and my own family does not value sometimes my opinions. I don't value some of their opinions, but we hold together and we help each other out, and we pulled money together for the first starter home for the first person that can make it. Let's, make a tamaliza so that we can send somebody to college. Like, we are there, we are present, we need to continue to double down on that positive. And so that's the discovery of the focus group.
Well, thank you very much. Jennifer will come back up. We have some time for questions. You can make the questions to any specific person or to the panel in general. So, Melissa, I think, you've got a customer?
Thank you so much. Buenos días. Dr. Lourdes Rodriguez, I'm a public health researcher, and it is such a pleasure to see a bunch of Latinas up there representing. I have one comment and I have one question. And the comment, as a scholar, I know the importance of being scrupulous, like being so anal retentive with your methodology. And maybe I missed the slide with methodology, sample size, all of the shortcomings of the research methodology. So if it's anywhere in here or if any of the reports, I would appreciate seeing that, because for me, that is what sorts opinion from important findings. So maybe I missed it.
Yeah, that's us. Sorry, it's a sample size of 1,000 Latinos. Okay. Yeah.
And how was the survey conducted? Was it, random sample?
Yeah, so we tried to get a national sample of Latinos, and I had slides up there kind of telling you about like the distribution and how we did our best to try to get a diverse sample of Latinos and not just focus here in Texas. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
We can talk more about methodology, because I am such a geek with these things.
Yeah.
I want to geek.
I can also send you like the top lines, and we can geek about it together.
Great, awesome.
Yeah.
If you could share it with all of us, because I think I had the same question.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And then for me, one of the things that you mentioned about sorting the opinion from the values was really important. Could you speak a little bit about, in this moment, what do we need to do to create spaces for having the conversation about these findings? This is for all four of you, that help us differentiate between opinions, findings, and values.
Yeah, so, right, I was just presenting descriptive data, right? I haven't done a full-on analysis. This is just to get everybody like a taste of what the data is, and also just to give people like familiarity with the questions that are on there, to see if you as a researcher, you want to tap into some of these questions. And I think that Civitas is also really open to working with different departments in the university, right? But yeah, I think that this survey, I translated it from, I got I think a ChatGPT translation, and I went through it and I made sure that it was good for Spanish speakers, right? But yeah, I think we're open to really collaborating and working with other departments in the community.
Super quick, I'm in an extremely polarized environment, and so if you were to have a discussion about opinions and values, you would likely have a a discussion about, I want to be able to own a home, I need a car. And on the other side, you would have a discussion about, our climate crisis makes it imperative that you live in a higher density apartment and take the bus. And those are opinions and values intermingled in a very tribalistic, fractured, one party discussion. And then, of course, the fracture gets bigger the further, the more diverse the party affiliation. There really is a sense, and it's almost never discussed, which is one of the reasons I think this is so important, that, well, everybody's like me, right? And when it comes to really foundational issues, I see the Liberty sign, it is not the case that we are on the same page. And if we're not willing to say that and talk to each other about it, then we're not going to, I think, make progress. And when we don't make progress, people who need progress are hurt more than people who don't need progress. And that has an age, wealth, and color differential that we need to, I think, own.
But when we have a lot of questions, so
Who do you want next?
first come, first served.
I wanted to ask Jennifer, with all the fires and everything in California and the mass deportation, who is going to rebuild those homes? Because if you talk about Texas, es puro Latino, mana. Wherever you go, construction site, es casi puro Latino. So, I mean, that has to have a tremendous impact on rebuilding California.
It's all Trump's fault. He caused the climate crisis, he caused the deportation crisis, but for Trump, everything would be rebuilt today. And we start from that extreme and we go to the other extreme, which is, why don't we have a path for people to have a work permit? How stupid can we be? I mean, we need people, and these are good people, and they're hardworking, and we need them. And so why don't we allow that? And then we have pushback from, again, through multiple sources, which I think are most acutely visible when you get into a discussion, bipartisan discussion about, so what about enforcing against employers? Because if we started enforcing against employers, we would have a work permit program, in my humble judgment. So again, there are just these tribal truths held to be self-evident with religious fervor. And my people say it's this, and your people say it's that. And at the end of the day, nothing's good.
So how are you going to do it?
We're not going to do it. It's going to take decades. There's a new proposal for, I think it's out of 8 or 10 homes in one of the valleys that was burnt. And these are, by the way, in historically very fire-prone areas, but where there's a new road people want the government wants to have that would take away everyone's backyard. So how long in our court system is it going to take to resolve that conflict? And unless there's a road, there's not a house, there's not a structure. So the lawyers are going to the mats, and we charge by the hour.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments and your research and your good work. Everybody, it seems the panel makes a case for education being very important. I appreciate the fact that more information on Latinos is very important. So this support, then, it stands to reason that the Civitas Institute, after this conference, can recommend that we keep the Mexican American and Latino Studies Department, which provides this information and this educational base that we desperately need, that we also keep the Center for Mexican American Studies that's provided 50 years of excellent research and support for education, which has enabled that growth that you're talking about, our success getting into the university and graduating. But also, I would love it if the Civitas Institute would follow up on their excellent research on housing and the trades, you know, because right now the state is getting ready to remove the ITI, the certification and licensing of immigrants that report under the ITIN to pay their taxes. If that is removed, then we're going to remove a lot of plumbers, electricians, and HVAC contractors from construction in Texas. The home ownership is like everybody talks about that, not only as stability, but you know, the American dream and being stable. That is also being removed from Texas because, you know, now homeowners cannot purchase a home and mortgage a home if they have ITIN. So Civitas would do a marvelous job, you know, recommending as a result of this conference, the sustaining our programs at UT and also those two other issues recommended to policymakers. Thank you.
I have another question. By the way, on the issues of Civitas, none of us are full-time employees of Civitas, so you'll need to talk to them about that.
Your comments and your research are so very beautiful, and I appreciate the questions that have been asked, because we do want to know about the methodology and the different ways the qualitative and quantitative research work, as well as the framework. I spend the nights and days crying and praying for the over 18,000 people that are in detention centers. We might not have new houses. I see a lot of houses, buildings. We have so many cranes in Austin. But Texas leads the country in detainees. These people are incredible hard workers. They have passion in their lives for their families and their futures. And so I hope possibly the Civitas Institute can do something about this area of people that are the lifeblood of this country, of the world. So this is out of the subject, but you're talking about Latinos. There are a lot of Latinos in those private prisons and detention centers, so thank you for anything y'all can do with that.
I don't need the mic. Thank you. Hi, my name is Rachel Gonzalez-Martin. I'm an affiliate of the Center for Global Business at McCombs and a faculty member of Latino Studies here on campus, just down the hall, or just down the way here. I have a couple of questions. So I thought it was really wonderful. I didn't catch your name.
I'm Linette.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying?
My name is Linette.
Linette. Okay.
Karla.
Karla, you were speaking a lot about what came from the focus group, and I just have to say, so much of that is a cultural difference. It isn't necessarily thinking about economics, it's really thinking about what cultural factors people bring with them. A few years ago, I wrote books focusing on cultural entrepreneurship and consumer citizenship in Latino communities, specifically focusing on this idea of what Latinos bring to the United States, and some people who never moved anywhere, who just were always here. So I have a few questions about, one, how did the project decide to compare Texas and California as sort of these spaces? Only because I'm from the Bay Area, I spent here 10 years at UT, and I'll be the first to tell you, people in Texas aren't looking to be compared to California. So I was really surprised when I saw a panel of people leading with this voice of California. I was like, did they tell the Tejanos that they were bringing Californians? So there's that one issue, right? Thinking about how those spaces in Kansas spaces, and why San Antonio and Riverside as opposed to Oakland and Dallas, right? Thinking about geographies and cultural geographies. The other is, again, as a faculty member in Latino study, the word Latino kind of being used so generally, kind of like in terms of thinking about methods. I was wondering how y'all decided to craft the use of the word Latino versus one of the many other variants, particularly in Texas in the RGB Hispanic, right? And then even thinking about what are the demographic numbers of Mexican descent someone mentioned someone from Venezuela, someone mentioned someone from Mexico City. All of those communities have very different documented migratory histories, particularly with relationship to South America and of Mexico and the United States, where in the education levels, the economic levels, the governmental structures are completely different for bringing those people into the U.S. So I'm just wondering how, with your focus groups, you shook out kind of, okay, who are we going to invite, how are we going to do that type of educational levels, but then also really big Texas and California. What brings those two together in this conversation?
I mean, it's demographics.
Yeah, just really quickly, and maybe Jennifer, my co-author, may have something to say, but these are the two big enchiladas, California and Texas. I mean, they're basically the two dominant states in the United States today, and they're both almost exactly somewhere around 40% Hispanic. Frankly, if we had the resources, I would have liked to have done a lot more in Florida, because that's another place, and of course a very different community. But we wanted to find something that was as broad as we could find, and we thought that this was, that was the terminology that worked best, given what we were trying to do, because we were talking about people of descent from a particular part of the world. So, Jennifer, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, even from my mom's side of the family, which, I'm not Italian, I'm Sicilian, right? there's so many differences, and they're so important across so many factors. I think for me, one of the biggest reasons for the focus we had, although I too would have loved to have added not just Florida, but also a major Midwest city like Chicago, and even New York. And New York, I think, would have been very Puerto Rican centered, which would have been a whole different demographic. But again, very centric. I apologize, and I really am being expelled from this state tonight. So don't worry, I'm not going to invade your space permanently. But so many in California, including Latinos, believe socialism is the only answer. And anyone who's kind of lived with that system, my son, who was a jazz musician at Berkeley High School, had this remarkable experience, having, grown up pretty woke in the Berkeley school system, right? Our sister city, Berkeley's sister city, Havana, has a incredible jazz school for kids there. And so our kids go 1 week and spend a week in Havana with those kids who are poor as church mice. And we have to send tampons and toothpaste and reeds for saxophones and guitar strings. And they left Bernie Kratz, and they came back shouting from the windows of my Prius, "We love George W. Bush." And it was a window into a world that we talk about in California, but don't live. And we have differences. And we now have a very strong, and so the reason I mention that is that's weird. I think that's kind of weird in most of the United States. And Texas, we think of as like poor, victimized, black and brown people in Texas. We're so sorry they have to live there. But actually people are living pretty well, and they can read. They can read. Your kids can read, our kids can't read. And so we're looking to make really basic comparisons, in part to pierce through California's arrogance and reputation. So that's overly brutal, and if we had the resources, we would have added more locations. But I respect absolutely the differences, but I wanted to just emphasize what a core difference in values, opinions, and prospects that the two states now have.
Wow.
Yeah, for a couple hours.
I have a question about qualitative research. Wait, Mike.
Okay, sure. Thank you. I appreciate your candor, actually. I just want to say that because I tend to have a lot of candor too. So I feel like we're related in that way. Sometimes not so good for me, but I still do it. So I was looking at the report, and I'd seen it before, And I guess my question is, I should say my name is Dr. Maria Cotera, and I am also a Mexican American Latino Studies professor. Very proud, came here about 5 years ago, coming home to my dream job. I am a graduate from UT, I'm a Longhorn, tried and true, and a Stanford grad for my PhD. I wanted to ask about the qualitative side of this and the kind of basis for some of the important questions you're asking. And I really appreciate the work y'all have done. And I think it's important work. That's why it's really important to me when I look at this bibliography, I get a little concerned. Because Stan Steiner, I treat that as an archival document.
It was for the history part of it. It wasn't.
Yeah, but that is not updated history, sir. I apologize for interrupting.
Well, excuse me, but that section that I wrote, that section was, here's the history. I don't even know if he's still alive.
Well, right, that's the problem, because there's a lot of history work that has been done. In fact, we're having a symposium. I invite all of you guys to the symposium, Anglos and Mexicans in the Making of Texas. It's right down the street, same day. You are welcome to come. It's free and open to the public. They will be discussing really foundational work about Texas by one of our own, David Montejano. And scholars from around the country will be coming to talk about the 40th anniversary of the 25th anniversary of the publication. I made him older than he was. 25th anniversary of the publication of that book. So with all due respect, I understand, I've read Stan Steiner's book, and I study movement history, and I consider that book as really critical to a certain political moment.
Well, that's what it was referring to.
But it does not represent the historiography of the present moment, and that is critical. And also I would expect to see much more social scientific and demographic, some of your work would have been critical to this. So what I worry about, right, is that findings are being put out, right, that reflect people's feelings and preconceived opinions rather than the sort of extant scholarship. And it is very important to have fields, right, that can provide you with this. We would be delighted to work with you to help you, build up and beef up and bring up to date your bibliography. This is the kind of work we do. And so I really see the work we do as, contributing to the important work that you're doing. And I do think iconoclastic opinions are not a bad thing to shape things up. I totally agree with you. We do need to sort of think outside the box and all this, but it should be grounded, right, in, the bibliography and the literature of the scholarship that has been conducted by PhDs and esteemed national scholars, for the last.
Do you have any idea of the caliber of the people in this room?
Absolutely.
And so I will just say to you, I am blown away because it's not what I do. I wanted to step into this role of looking at what are we doing in my backyard? And what I do is not what you do. And it would be so much better if you could do a way better job than we did. And it would be so great if we could elaborate. So
I want to clarify, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that we could have done a better job than you did.
But I think you would have. Absolutely. You are superb. You all are in an academic environment that allows you to achieve excellence and a caliber of scholarship that was beyond the scope of what this could be.
But this should be that.
We're doing
Make it so.
Well, unfortunately, the university just announced that our department was closing, so that's the problem, right? But that's not what this is about, and I want to keep the focus on you. That was my only comment.
Okay, we have got to move along. Give one more question. Okay. You'll take that one. Okay.
Just quickly on the skilled trades, I wonder if you could talk a little more about that. Are there positive trends of more Latinos in the skilled trades? What are you hopeful about that as a path to prosperity?
Absolutely.
Yes. And what we're seeing is in the school systems, we're starting to see much more respect for the trades. We're starting to see a value to it, and there are many programs in community colleges. Those resources are coming, and we are building them, but they are not enough. Like the housing problem that we're trying to point out about California is not to compare ourselves, but I speak of Mexico City as my point of reference when I speak to other people. And I would say the same. Don't make the same mistakes that we've made in Mexico City, where, I mean, if you go back now, there are many places that no longer look like Mexico City because Mexicans cannot buy in their own country. So I think the comparison between California and Texas is demographically moved. And if there are funders here in the audience who are noticing, didn't I tell you Latinos don't agree on everything? And I don't know if you've noticed, but most of the people who have spoken up today are Latinos, are very passionate, and we help each other out. Because now I'm going to be calling you and asking you questions so that you can guide me, and hopefully you can see some of the work I've done. But one of the things that I really want to point out is the reason why I think I've been shaped this way to question things is because I have seen very noble causes carry a lot of damage. So we did have a Green Party in Mexico that was corrupt to its core. And they did a lot of work in the name of the environment, and nothing has really come out of it for Mexican citizens. And Mexico loves to copy California and the United States. So I'm seeing these trends, and I'm trying to bring awareness that all of these different points of view must be spoken about. One of the pieces that we wrote in the California Latino study before this national study was the fact that somebody, a Latina, started questioning the quality of the education. And she ran a sample of all the schools that are named Cesar Chavez. Cesar Chavez schools, all of them, failed to pass reading and math. But when they come and they open these schools and they make a lot of lip service to Latinos that are not coming through with real results, we are starting to question some of those things. We're starting to question the environmental laws. We're starting to question the educational policies because they're not working for our families. So I think it's important that these discussions continue to be as heated as they need to be.
I also wanted to say that my advisor is in the Mexican American and Latino Studies program. I'm a third-year government PhD student, and I'm obviously learning. So I thank you all for coming.
I just, before we go to the next speaker, just a few facts. I think actually Latinos have a great opportunity because they're already in the trades, they're gaining into the trades, and in the AI universe, the trades are really going to be the place for a lot of people for upward mobility. I'm not so sure it's so good to be a geek. And I think that what we're going to see, and what we're seeing, is enormous shortages in the reindustrialization of the United States. The industrial workforce is getting very old. And what I see here in Texas, and I also see it in other parts of the country, is a lot of young Latinos are sort of like, they get the idea that, really, it's going to be a long time before we have a robot who can replace a plumber. A robot who can replace, a bullshitting academic, that's a different story. Anyway, I want to thank you and thank the panel and turn it over to Mike Tom.